Welcome back. How we doing, guys? Welcome back to the Funker 530 live show. I'm hoping that all my audio and stuff works. If I can't keep my audio and stuff working while I'm actually here, imagine the panic when I show back up and I haven't tested anything. If you guys recall, before I left, I had a whole bunch of issues with technical stuff on this side. We actually had to deliver the live show from over there. So luckily, I came back here, I turned it off, I turned it back on, I kicked it around a little bit. Violence solves more problems than you think it does, and everything seems to work. Do me a favor, tap on the like button for us. We got a lot to talk about. I actually intend for this stream to go a little bit longer than our past ones. So we're typically live for about an hour talking about everything from across the globe, conflict, war, major goings on in the military community. We're going to be really heavily talking about Ukraine tonight. This is not a Ukraine-specific show, but we do talk a lot about Ukraine because it's war, and it is the closest thing to a peer v. peer fight that we've seen in a long time. So it's directly relevant with what Funker 530 does. So if you guys wouldn't mind do me a favor, tap on the like button because it's one of the 2 free ways that you can support the stream. The other way that you can support us is by dropping a comment. Let me know where you guys are chiming in from. I do appreciate it. We do. Because we are an international community, we're an international team here at Funker 530, and we love seeing where everybody's watching from. Let's talk a little bit about why I was away. So, most of you guys might be aware that I'm still Army Reserve. I had to go on my 2 weeks, guys. It was a foreign weapons armors course where I got to do everything from take apart all the way down to bare frame, a Makarov and a TT, all the way up to the Dishka, and it was a really great time. It was a broadening type of skill set for me as an intel guy. A really, really fun course. We talked about that over on the other stream Saturday and earlier today. So thanks to you guys for jumping in on that. Welcome back. How we doing? South Africa, Kansas. Ronnie got a new tattoo. I did not. I've got one planned though. Now let's talk a little bit about schedule. We got to cover a few more things before I can jump into everything that we're going to talk about tonight. This is going to be a week of streams, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard right here. And then I'm going away again. This time I'm going away for something in the realm of this job, right? So a few months back, I announced something that was a little bit premature. I kind of got into a little bit of trouble for it. I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I can tell you it involves television. I'm going to be going to film that. Right, so that is moving forward. It's still happening. I'm going to be gone from the 11th. It was supposed to be the 10th, but from the 11th through the 21st, and then I'll be back on the 22nd. And I'm hoping after that the schedule gets somewhat back to normal. But something you guys should expect is that I will be traveling quite a bit with this role. One of my roles here at Funker 530 is to integrate with our partners, integrate with industry, integrate with other creators. So that is something that we intend to take advantage of, for me to travel, for me to get, to know a lot of the folks out there that are covering a lot of the stuff that you guys are watching every day. And I'm really excited about having the opportunity to do it. So I would personally like to thank Mr. Funker himself for stepping away from his chickens for 5 minutes, to give me the opportunity. Anyway, let's start to get rolling a little bit here. Love the shirt. Oh, let's talk about the shirt. I forgot. Brand new. Hot off the press, HIMARS 2024. I'm a believer in HIMARS 2024. You guys can check that out. There's a pinned comment up at the top of the live chat. For those that are watching after the stream was live today, you'll have to wait for YouTube to publish a live chat. There's nothing I can do about that. They decide to publish that whenever the hell they choose. But check on the top of the live chat. There's a pinned comment up there. I do believe I put it in the description. If I didn't, I'll try to remember to go back. That's a very simple problem, but I'm pretty stupid. So let's dive into what we've got here. Please do continue to, as you join, jump into the chat. Let me know that you're here. Say hello. Let us know where you're chiming in from. Appreciate it very much. And I do need to check in on some of the support already rolling across, as well as mention our sponsor for tonight. I'll get back into the groove. I promise. I'll get back into it. Steve-O, thank you very much for becoming a member. Alpha Wright, thank you for becoming a member. Beast member, by the way. Appreciate that. Toby, Marcus, David, thank you for renewals. Appreciate that very much. Bobadar. Bob Darbar. Thanks for the 8 months. Appreciate that. I'm sorry if I f***ed up your name, dude. I'm really good at pronouncing things. Where's the beard? Well, the army cult doesn't allow beards. You know, it's the weirdest cult I've ever been a part of. They don't even do punch. But they don't allow beards. Oddly, we're one of the few countries in the world that still doesn't allow facial hair. And they've proven that wrong, that you can, you know, seal your gas mask. You can seal a pro mask just fine. Just fine. Well, it's professionalism. That's subjective. That's very subjective. Hey, cutie. Hi, Janet. How are you? Miss you. What are you doing? Let's jump in. We got a lot to talk about tonight. So we're going to talk about a few major topics, obviously. Tonight's stream is going to be a little bit of a rough overview. We will be covering some more relevant, current, up-to-date things. But because there are some out there that might not be able to stay in touch with everything that's happening, I do want to do a little bit of a summation of what's going on. We're going to talk about the referendums and, you know, by extension of referendums, annexation of, 4 areas of Ukraine. We're going to talk about mobilization, partial mobilization, whatever the hell that means. We're going to talk about the 2 counteroffensives that are actively happening in the East. We're just going to call it the East, right? It used to be the Kharkiv counteroffensive, and then it was the Izyum counteroffensive, and then it was the Lyman counteroffensive. We're just going to call it the East. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing Lyman correctly. I asked a bunch of people, guys, I'm doing my best, all right? And we're also going to talk about Kherson in the south. So we got a lot to get through. Let's very first talk about a recent video that I launched, that we launched from the Funker 530 team on everything that's been provided to Ukraine to date from the United States. Now, at the time of filming, this was just prior to me going on, my little bit of the last 2 weeks, prior to me going on travel. When we filmed that, it was, I want to say, $15.2 billion worth of gear. Right, we broke down very specifically everything that has been provided. We used the DoD fact sheet for it. We provided links to the DoD fact sheet. Then, prior to us being able to launch that, an additional $1.1 billion was announced that increased the amount of, and I'm only focusing on one weapon system, this one, increased the amount of HIMARS provided under USAI, UASI, Ukraine Security Aid Initiative, UASI, USAI. There are essentially 2 pools that the United States is drawing from. One is presidential drawdown, which is current stock. And then there's the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which is effectively the United States taking up contracts with industry to provide Ukraine arms and munitions. Well, this $1.1 billion that was just announced over the last week or so, week and a half, comes straight from the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, which is essentially contracts with industry rather than depleting current stock. An additional 18 HIMARS were supposed to be included in that. Now, here's what's interesting. A photo that you guys see in the thumbnail has been circulating of exactly 18 HIMARS sitting on a barge. And the report is that they are already developed. Now, everything that I read on these additional 18 HIMARS, which would take the total at the time from 20-something to 34. So whatever 34 minus 18 is. That's math. I failed Algebra 2 twice. Nobody said I was good at math. So the initial report said that those 18 HIMARS were going to take years to get there. And the entire narrative from the DoD, from the Department of Defense, was that we are investing and planning for the long term. Well, I don't know where this photo came from, but it's ironic that there's exactly 18 HIMARS sitting on a barge being passed around Ukrainian circles. I thought that was interesting. Now, there is an additional $625 million package that was just announced with an additional 4 HIMARS. So now we're up to over 42, or 2 over 40 HIMARS, more specifically, 42 HIMARS. Now, the question that I have for all of you guys is, and you guys are all aware that I'm a proponent of providing Ukraine the means necessary to expel Russia from its lands. I am not a proponent of handing things from the United States to Russia. how many HIMARS is too much? I'm not leading you anywhere with that. I am honestly curious as to what you guys' thoughts are on how many HIMARS is too much. Originally, if we think way back to when Ukraine first started receiving, Western munitions, and there was the first talk of the HIMARS, they asked for over 100. I'm not saying we're anywhere close to too many. My concern is with increasing at the rapid pace that just happened, with increasing that, the risk of those falling into the hands of Russia increases exponentially. Now, Ukraine has done an excellent job keeping HIMARS, a weapon system like HIMARS, which is far and beyond much more capable than anything, of a similar type that Russia has available. But I'm interested to hear what you guys think about how many is too many too fast. 75 to 100, 1,000, that's too many. That we don't even have that kind of stock of our own. 42, the answer to life, the universe, and everything. 400, up to 50. I think 100 is too much. 500. And remember, let's go back to something that I mentioned. There are two pools that we are pulling from. There is presidential drawdown, and then there's Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative. All right. Ukraine security assistance is coming from industry. These are being built by industry, not coming from or depleting U.S. stock. So when you guys look at these DoD releases, and I can give you a link to the DoD release website. When you look at these DoD releases, pay very, very close attention to which one of those pools it's coming from. Chat's moving real fast tonight. I appreciate that. That's a good thing. 100 too many at once. How many missiles for HIMARS can we supply? That's a softball of a question. We've tried covering that before. There's a lot of industry knowledge that I just don't have to actually try to cover that, fully. All right, let's jump into referendums. All right. So most of you are familiar at this point that referendums took place. And by extension of those referendums, there was an annexation, a very interesting speech to listen to from Putin. I'm not going to rehash a lot of that speech right now, but I don't think it's foreign for anybody to believe that the referendums, and by extension of that annexation of these 4 territories, is entirely built upon a sham. There is a precedent, a historical precedent for sham elections for Russia. South Ossetia, 2014. There is a historical precedent for me saying that. I don't think it's foreign for anybody to believe that. Now, here is the specific point, and this is where we're about to. I've adjusted how we're doing the show tonight. We're about to jump right into footage. You mean to tell me that 95% of the population, and that's an approximation. All right, I know that there are specific numbers for each of the areas where referendums. I'm throwing 95% out there because it was north of that under most circumstances. 95% of the population approved these referendums, when in fact, you have things like this happening in Russia. First video coming up for you guys. Russian recruiting officer is shot by a civilian in Ust-Limisk. Once again, don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I don't care. Why isn't my volume working? Video's coming up for you guys right now. Okay, isolated incident, right? This is inside of Russia that this is happening. So as an extension of that, the point that I'm trying to make here is, if you're making an argument that these people are Russians, then what we need to do is we need to take a broad scale of some kind and set a baseline. So we're going to focus on incidents inside of Russia where we can get some kind of a gauge on how people are taking this situation. So next video, which is going to start to get us a little bit into mobilization, but we'll get there. I promise. What we got here is Russian draftees fighting the police that are forcing them to be mobilized. This video is coming up for you guys right now, and it's an absolute brawl. Who did it? Thanks for the $10. I'm gonna field that one here in just a second. All right, bring it back up. Give me a second to field that one. Now, okay, once again, isolated incident, more related to mobilization than anything else. What we're doing right now is we're taking a look. And first of all, for those that are kind of just joining us, I haven't been here for 2 weeks. I was away on travel, so we're doing a little bit of a summation, wheeling back before we can come back to present day. So once again, could very much so be an isolated incident. We're talking about two different problem sets. What about this one? We're looking at the baseline of general acceptance of Russians being involved in the war in Ukraine, directly being involved, not just supporting what the Russian government is reporting via state media. So what you got here is this homeboy who strolls up to a draft registration office, backs his Leda up to block everybody that's inside, and starts hucking Molotov cocktails at it. Gonna take a sip. One more, and then we're going to get into our next talking point. Okay, so he ends up continuing to huck Molotov cocktails at that registration office. What's weird about this, about all of this, right? And we're speaking specifically to somehow 95 some odd % of the people in a different country voting for annexation. Somehow, people even in Dagestan are just becoming hurt at an alarming rate.
Чай, индийский чай. Привет Дагестану. Не забудьте скинуть нам. Хорошо. На тренировку едешь. Куда все торопитесь?
Are they out of milk?
Чай, индийский чай. Привет Дагестану. Не забудьте скинуть нам. Хорошо. На тренировку едешь.
Here's my point to all this. If all of this is happening inside of Russia, I find it extremely difficult to believe that people in Ukraine, whether they're in the Donbas, in Kherson, or in Zaporizhia, voted for this, voted for Russian annexation. I find that extremely difficult. That brings us right into mobilization. Now let's talk a little bit about mobilization. It's going exactly as could have been expected based on the precedent set since February 24th. Since February 24th, our understanding of Russia's military has become entirely different from what it was prior. Again, I've spent the entirety of my military career focusing very specifically on, Russian weapon systems because that's what terrorists are using. And on paper, it has been the boogeyman. Now, when it came to Russian mobilization, initially, once again, summation, I haven't been here for 2 weeks, so we're rehashing a few things so that we can get to current state. Because if I just jump into current state, you know, there's context and conditions that I'm setting for the discussions later. Initially, it was supposed to be like 300,000, and then even Putin himself admitted that there were issues, that people were being drafted that weren't supposed to be drafted, people with medical conditions are being drafted that weren't supposed to be drafted. Here is ultimately the problem with whether or not these, whether it's 300,000 or 1.2 million, ultimately the effect from a combat power perspective from these individuals is going to be is relatively minimal. My opinion only. This is my opinion. Has nothing to do with the rest of the Funker 530 team. It's got nothing to do. I don't have time to watch media. That's my opinion, and let me show you why. Right? First video that we've got here. This is an AK. This AK, there is audio behind this, and I'm going to play it actively. Is supposedly provided to a tanker. Now, somebody out there might say, well, if he's a tanker, he doesn't need an AK. Any of my U.S. military tankers out there, if you could imagine your M4 looking like, there's internals to that. If the external looks like that, then the inside looks like that. Let's take a look. Will you show the drone dropping munitions on the Russians who are in the middle of an intimate moment? Maybe. I got to think about that one, man. Listen, it's not just me here. It's a whole team, all right? Listen, the internals of an AK, I just got out of a foreign weapons armorer's class, all right? The internals of an AK are not overly complicated. There are still very important, very small pieces inside of there that if rusted whatsoever, that thing can fail, and it will, right? I mean, everything from the braided hammer spring that, you know, I learned a trick, actually. If you have an AK and you go to take apart your trigger group and you don't have a pipe cleaner, you're doing it wrong. Amazing. You'll have to follow me over to the other stream for me to explain that. There are pieces inside of there that if that thing is that rusted out, they are setting this dude up for failure. Once again, isolated incident. Let's move on to another one. We're talking about mobilization right here. Now, from an effectiveness perspective, right? Some veterans might look at this, might watch this, and think to themselves, well, looks pretty standard. You be the judge of that. What the hell's going on here? It's not letting me copy pasta. Why is my stuff not working? Copy. Paste. Okay. All right, we got to use the mouse. I think my keyboard's dying. Coming up for you guys now. Rubber bands as well. Yeah. Yep. I could see how that would work. I understand some of this a little bit delayed. I've been gone for 2 weeks. These dudes are absolutely hammered. There's a technical term for this. Let me explain to you what it is. It's housed. This is what is being sent to Ukraine right now. So if there are those out there that have the perception that this 300,000, 1.2 million, whatever it is now, is providing some level of combat power that is going to dramatically change the landscape in Ukraine, I have to disagree with you. Based solely on the footage. Again, I've been gone for 2 weeks, guys. I spent the last 48 hours getting caught up. Right? There's a guy passed out over here. He's just... Look at this one. There's a guy on the ground there. Isolated incident. Okay. Let's try another one. What about on the bus? Just give me a second. Oh, that one was playing before I expected it to. Here we go. Go to the other side now. Hell yeah. Isolated incident. Okay. Let's take a look at what it looks like to be mobilized. All right. So even if they are drunk, maybe, you know, it's always been funny. Russians do things better drunk. Okay. Let's set the stage for you and show you what it looks like to be mobilized at one of their mobilization hubs, whatever you want to call it. All right. So they're packed in there like sardines. That's to be expected. That's not foreign at all. Right? Kind of just all thrown into one spot. Nothing really out of the ordinary with this. This is what you would expect to see. That's rapid, but stand by. What happens when you get a bunch of dudes that don't want to be there with a bunch of other dudes that don't want to be there, and each blame each other for the fact that they're there? You know what you get? Get a fight. So these are mobilized conscripts picking a fight with either Luhansk or Donetsk People's Republic conscripts. So that tells me that they're probably somewhere in the Donbas. Now, reportedly, I don't speak Russian. I don't. Reportedly, the mobilized Russian conscripts got pissed off at either the LPR or DPR conscripts because it was, quote, their fault that they were there. But we're really just talking about morale, right? We're talking about, you know, just the general capability. What if we start to talk about, you know, equipment, right? We covered the AK. The AK is a little suspect. It's, you know, only one weapon system, you know, might be a fluke. What about food? What did Napoleon say? Army runs on its bullets? No. Runs on its stomach. So what about food? Well, mobilized families, just like yours or mine would, are pretty upset about the fact that their families are getting mobilized. So what they're trying to do is provide food to their mobilized soldiers because Russia can't. And they're not. Again, it's took me 48 hours to find this stuff, guys. Like, I've been gone for 2 weeks. Here's the point of all this. Oh, wait. We're not done. We're not done. One more. I've got more notes here that I'm going to be able to cover tonight, so I'm kind of picking and choosing. Right? Let's stay on gear. Let's stay on equipment. Let's stay on logistics. Right? You know, there's a quote I see in chat all the time. You know, something about real smart people talk about logistics. Yeah, I get it. Let's talk about logistics. I'm going to give you full screen on this one.
Так, потом что? Спальники. Однозначно. Будете спать, где придется. Спальники однозначно. Плюс туристические коврики или замена. Ну поняли, да, все? Это все свое, мальчишки. Вам форму, все, что армия, вам броню, вот это все, что касаемо военного. Этого ничего нет. Наших мужиков мы сами все укомплектовали. По медицине тоже. От срачки, то есть лапирамиды, перекись водорода обязательно. Жгуты. У меня на вас на всех жгутов не хватит. Мы мужиков...
Нету жгутов, собирал.
А?
Нету в аптеках жгутов. И все, уехал.
Родственники пусть. Аптечки, блядь, с этих, как его, автомобильные...
Машины, да.
Автомобильные аптечки потрошите, берите оттуда жгуты. Так, мужики, только не ржать. Жен, девушек, матерей просите, прокладки.
Сапоги?
Самые дешевые, прокладки, плюс...
The cheapest pads and the cheapest tampons. I didn't make that up, dude. Listen, I'm showing you footage, right? I don't whatever. Here you go.
Самые дешевые тампоны. Тампоны знаете для чего?
Нет. Кровь останавливает. Откуда?
Пулевое ранение, прям туда вводите и все. Он начинает разбухать и придавливает стенки. Мужики, я это еще с Чечни знаю. Прокладки обязательно, ну дешевенькие. Понятно? Вам туда все сгодится, сейчас сырая погода. У меня там мои друзья, мои товарищи. То есть вот эту всю информацию нам скидывают это. По возможности, ребята, то-то, то-то, это, медицина. Мужики, сами о себе позаботьтесь, пожалуйста.
Here's the thing. Again. And I see the comments, guys. I do. I get it. Shill. Whatever. CIA propaganda. You get extra points here. But it's also, whose line is it anyway, where the points don't matter? Here's what I'm getting at. Russia is mobilizing these people with nothing. I didn't have time to capture everything that I wanted to cover tonight because there was just so much of it. But I mean, a lot of this reporting, you know, can't really ultimately be substantiated unless you're there. That's another piece to this that you have to understand. I am just one guy looking at footage, and there's a team at Funker 530 that's finding this stuff out there. Okay. But you have to understand that when the amount of sources say the same thing, and one source has a dissenting opinion, Russia's mobilization is essentially turning Ukraine, this is callous, what I'm about to say is callous, into a target-rich environment for Ukrainians. That is effectively what's happening here. There's no other way to put that, right? I personally feel for these dudes, for this guy right here, that dude right there, and that dude, and that dude, and that dude. I do. I don't wish any harm on these dudes. But Russia is failing these guys. And their populace, what we looked at to begin the stream tonight, is starting to understand that. Let's move on. I need to jump in and answer some of this support that's been coming in. Thank you guys for it. I appreciate you so much. I do. Eagle Spurch, thanks for the $2. Ryan Saul, NATO deepfakes. Yeah, probably, man. That's why we're showing it. Because I'm getting paid to, I guess. I'm still hoping to receive that check sometime soon. Maybe. Dan, thanks for renewing your membership. Welcome. Appreciate that. Ohms, thanks for the 16 months. Holy crap, dude. Dan, thank you for the $5. Russian TV said, why not allow them to drink? They'll be better soldiers. If by better soldiers you mean they'll just do what they're told and charge over a mountain, yeah, maybe that there's a precedent for that too, right? I mean, we've got footage of them recruiting from prisons, which isn't that far off of like historical precedent for any country, really. There's reports of them being told, the same thing. Not one step back. You guys have all heard that before. Not one step back. If they do take a step back. If they're drunk, if they're hammered, if they're housed, they might not argue. F it. Okay. Maybe that's what Russia means by better soldiers, but that's the only thing that they could mean. Robert, thanks for becoming a beast. Appreciate your membership, man. Sebastian, thanks very much for the 490. Netherlands reporting for duty. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you. Can't get right. Thanks for the $1.87. Why not 100%, Ronnie? Why not? Because it has to be believable. And 95+% on the referendums is totally believable, right? That makes sense, right? Right? Bjor, thanks very much for becoming a member. Appreciate that. Who did it? Thank you for the $10. How much of the support do you think is because of Hunter's dealings to remain quiet? I know it's conspiracy talk. It's not conspiracy talk. It's been investigated. There was some absolutely shady stuff that was happening there. And I imagine it more almost like an icing on the cake thing, right? That's one guy. You know, the things that I say have no reflection on the Department of Defense, no reflection on the Funker 530. But doesn't that become something easy to say? You know, well, we gave you 42 HIMARS. So if maybe you could not focus on that, that'd be dope. I don't know, man. Thanks for the $10. Daily Bed Lamb, thanks for the $5. Those HIMARS are 18 on, were delivered to Romania in 2021, sir. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. I do very much. Guys, if something that can be, you know, proven factual and I call it wrong, call me out for it. I don't care. Daniel Bay. Whatever you want. Click on the pinned comment. Check out the HIMARS 2024 shirt. Talk about change, huh? All right, let's jump into the next thing that we've got here. The new conscripts should surrender to Ukraine. I think they'd be better off. That's happening. According to reporting, right? It's like, in each instance is like single source reporting, which is why it's not in the list here. But it's happening. I mean, I was still gone and scrolling through all of my different stuff. I'm seeing photos of people holding up their conscription documents being interviewed by Ukrainians. Like they were... The unsubstantiated reports are essentially that, you know, some of these folks are being trained for a day and then kind of just sent on their way. Go do Russia stuff in Ukraine. Whatever Russia stuff is, that's what was happening. But that's happening. Ronnie, hear about Ukraine applying for NATO? I did. Ukraine essentially used the precedent of Finland and Sweden for... those that aren't tracking this, of Finland and Sweden's expedited entry into NATO as precedent and argument for their own expedited entry. Here's where this starts to get out of my wheelhouse and knowledge base and understanding. Is upon it, say Stoltenberg were to like field this request, or you know the 30 NATO members were to field this request. Does that effectively mean that upon approval, if they were to receive expedited membership, that we would then be honor-bound, NATO-bound, policy-bound to respond in Ukraine? Question for the chat. Or is there like a grandfathered, you know, injury kind of clause? It's the wrong way to put that, but you know what I mean. Essentially, they're already in a conflict, so... Just checking in on the chat here for a little bit because we're moving a little bit faster than I expected to. Depends on what treaty we make with them. Well, essentially, my understanding, which could be way off target. There's a reason that I named my like vlog channel Ronnie Off Target because I'm off target. We're gonna use Russia numbers here 95% of the time. My understanding of entry into NATO is don't touch a NATO member. Right? Is each NATO member is a trigger. And by declaring war or you know taking offensive action against any NATO member, you have essentially done so against all NATO members. We talked about that quite a bit when Finland and Sweden got their approvals. Is we effectively added 2 additional triggers in 800 plus miles or kilometers. I don't remember which. 800 plus miles or kilometers to that trigger. They're not allowed to join while they're at war. Okay. Appreciate that. That's why you can't be in an active conflict to enter NATO. Interesting. Okay. NATO could shut down any further military action by installing air cover, close the skies, right? We've been talking about closing the skies now for a long time. And some of the challenges that effectively come along with that, you know, NATO closing the skies would ultimately mean U.S. air power going toe-to-toe with Russian air and air defense capabilities. And, you know, a short talking point that I have later on is going to explain why that still might be something that's possible. It's still something that should be avoided. Miss K, thank you for the $10. OTAN. 810 miles. Ah, that's what it is. Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. I got to scroll back up here. Jacques, thank you very much for the 723. Always interesting to hear your point of view. Yeah, it's just one dude, man. I'm just a guy looking at combat footage, being yelled at by the rest of the Funker team members for stuff. You know, just me. All right, let's jump into, let's start talking a little bit about counteroffensives. So, what I'd first like to do is I'd like to bring up a really awesome graphic that I want to say it was the Financial Times did. Kind of just show, F11, please, F11, thank you. Kind of just show what's been happening. Let me set the stage. We're going to cover the East and the South separately. I'm calling it the Eastern Counteroffensive because it used to be, and I covered this when we started, it used to be the Kharkiv counteroffensive, and then it was the Izyum counteroffensive, and then the Lyman counteroffensive, and then Kreminna. I guess now it could be the Kreminna counteroffensive, but we're just going to call it the East. All right? Take a look at this. I got to give you a bigger screen here. So I'm going to give you that. Ukraine's ultimate goal here is, from a strategic view perspective, the best that I can describe it, you know, $20 problem on a $5 budget in my brain, is ultimately an envelopment. Right, so you've got the counteroffensive taking place in Kherson. You don't see a whole lot of offensive actions taking place in Zaporizhia, but you do see it coming from the north. Essentially, force Russia into two fronts. Now, Kherson has been historically, and we're going to show some footage here in a moment. Kherson has been historically a little bit more of a grind on Ukraine. Ukraine has lost a lot. They have gained little relative to their gains in Kharkiv. Now, I personally believe they set a lot of conditions for this before doing so. You know, really advertising counteroffensives in Kherson. Whether that's, you know, a true deception strategy or not, I can't be sure. But there was a lot of talk about Ukraine's counteroffensive in the south, and not a whole lot about what they were planning or what they did, whether coincidental or not, in and around Kharkiv. Ukraine's not at war as Russian special military operation, so NATO can legally accept Ukraine's application. Then yes, NATO will be involved in the war. That's interesting. That's an interesting way of thinking and putting that, right? Because you're not wrong. Technically speaking, Vladimir Putin and Ukraine have not declared war on each other. But let's jump into the footage that I have for, let me back up. The majority of current activity, all eyes are on Kreminna right now. Now, Lyman was taken just a few days ago. I want to say 1st, maybe 2nd of October. The 1st was my anniversary, by the way. 11 years with the most beautiful woman in the world. You should all be jealous, and I am lucky. Let me just put it that way. Lyman was taken, and since we're going to hold here because I believe this goes all the way up to October 1st or the 2nd, since there has been additional ground that has been taken since. Our very first bit of combat footage that we have for the night is reportedly, once again, this is the footage we find, reportedly, an entire platoon-sized element of Russian infantry in full retreat somewhere near Lyman. Lyman? Is it Lyman or Lyman? Check it out. Lyman? Lyman? I might Google it. You're familiar with Vlad Vexler. Thanks for the $4.99. I'm not. He's a great source for understanding the Russian psyche. Thanks for the $4.99, Matthew, and appreciate that. I'm always, now that I'm full-time, I'm always looking for any way that I can increase personal knowledge. Jose, thank you very much for the $5.69. Can you pull the chat on who blew up the pipeline? We're going to talk about the pipeline here in a minute. USA, Russia, Ukraine, Balkans, or other. You know what? We'll do that. We'll do that. And by the way, hold on. Let's check in on our current poll, because I did have a birthday, and it wasn't this month. It was last month. And I'm interested to know, well, 38% of you got it right. 38% got it right. 37%, well, the rest of the percent. However, you guys already know how bad my math is. We tried calculating HIMARS, the total amount of HIMARS, and I'm pretty sure I was way off with that. Anyway, I'm 33. Let's go ahead and kill that. And we're gonna type up a new poll here. Who? My keyboard's not working. Just give me a second, guys. Give me a second. This is a great idea. I'd love to I'd love to capture everybody's opinion on this. Add option. Add option. I can only have 4 options. There we go. Let's watch that. Let's watch that as it comes in. Oh, and one more time. I think it's awesome. I do. I love it. I love it so much. Russia, United States in second right now. Okay. Interesting. Ukraine, yeah. I can see why that's getting the least vote. Red teaming that. Who stands to gain the most if Russia is the one that blew up Nord Stream 1 and 2? Great shirt. Check the pinned comment. I'm actually going to give you guys that link. We're going to click this. Here you go. Paste. There's the shirt. All right, let's jump into our next one here. I hope you react to the Russian soldier getting blown up while... Thanks for the 92 cents. I asked the boss if I could show that one. I'm on the fence about it. I really am. Stick around. Eagle Spurs, thanks for the $5. People are saying Elon's thrown in for Russia via tweet. I don't 100% think he was giving support to Russia, but thought. I haven't specifically seen, keeping in mind, I've been gone, and it was, the course that I was in was very time intensive, right? I'm going to answer your question first by saying I'm not tracking specifically what people are talking about, but to explain something that'll help put into context tonight's show, tonight's discussion. The course that I was in over the last 2 weeks was a very deep dive armorer's course for 16 different weapon systems. Everything from the Makarov, the TT, I'll try and cover as many of them as I can. Makarov, TT, Browning High Power, 1911, Uzi, MP5A3, RPG, PKM, AK-47/AKM, AK-74. Oh, man. G3, FAL, Dishka, and I'm losing track. A lot of time on that, and it was really difficult for me to keep up. I actually had the intent of creating a couple videos while I was gone. I just wasn't able to keep up, guys. And that's why over the last 48 hours or so since I've been home, I've been really cramming for tonight's stream and really excited about it, to be honest with you. I love my 1911. I've got one. I've got a Kimber. I don't ever shoot it. It stays in a case. I don't think it'll ever come out. You know, I might run a couple rounds through it every now and then. Let's jump into our next piece of footage. I'm getting off target here. We've got footage of Russian armor taking contact from Ukrainian armor while trying to retreat from Lyman. I'm Googling it. We're doing it live. Pronounce that.
Lyman.
I wasn't even close with either of the others. You know, again, I've said this before. I used to think I was good at pronouncing things. And I'm going to talk a little bit about why the general narrative is that this Russian armor was retreating. We're going to end up using Google Earth for that. Coming up for you full. Look at how easy this is about to be. Boop. Now there's a squad-sized element on top of this Russian armor. You're going to see Ukrainian armor roll in from the right here. They essentially get themselves into a quick standoff here. There's like a pause. Lyman? Lyman. I don't know, I'm just going to pick one and stick with it. So here's ultimately why the general narrative is that this Russian armor was in retreat, and I don't think that this is any kind of planned ambush. I think what you're looking at is a happenstance encounter, and the troops on top of that Russian armor just you can see what's left in the road took the brunt of that. To the upper portion of your screen is south. Okay. These Russians are essentially trying to get out of Lyman, by moving to the northwest. Now, in the northwest, there was just a whole litany of other challenges that they were going to effectively run into as an eventuality, but there was ultimately nowhere for them to go along this road. Now, let's pull up Google Earth so you guys can see this spot a little bit more clearly. As long as I did my copy pasta job right here, which you never know. F11. There it is. There you go. This is Lyman, Lemon, Lemon, Lyman, Lemon Lime. And that is effectively where this took place. So again, that Russian vehicle was moving along this road, trying to get to the northwest. Now, there was also footage that I didn't capture the Twitter link for that one, and we hadn't gotten to publishing it yet, of essentially a road somewhere here. Not pronouncing that, guys. I'm not going to try it. That there just littered with casualties. You know, something that we take a lot of flack for every so often is, why not show more, like, you know, dead people on the side of the road? That's not combat footage, right? Every so often, if there's combat footage value, we will post that stuff. We do everything that we can to not edit stuff, to not be a gore site. We're not LiveLeak. You know, if you want to find it, stuff's out there. Okay. Let's jump into the next one here. Now, as Russian troops move their way out of Lyman, they began to establish a defensive posture near Kreminna. This one was funny because I remember doing a video on the Tulpan, 200 and something millimeter self-propelled artillery that they did this cool, like, I don't know, press release video for, and it got geolocated and it got blown up. Check this out. This guy is discussing their defensive posture, and where he says is Kreminna, but it's actually Rubizny. Okay, I don't have a translation for you. I found this like 45 minutes to an hour ago.
С тяжелыми боями вышли, теперь в срочном порядке формируют новую линию обороны в районе Кременной для того, чтобы...
I'll give you a quick link to this if you want to go and watch the whole thing, but I'm going to skip forward to a very specific part.
...успех и пройти в сторону северодонецкой агломерации. Укрепления возводят спешно части, которые отошли...
Here we go.
Еще накануне там наши позиции, теперь противник. Артиллеристы 2-го армейского корпуса сейчас ведут огонь по подразделениям формирования киевского режима, которые действуют в районе Белогоровки. Сейчас артиллерия делает все возможное для того, чтобы не дать противнику ударить по трассе в районе Кременной.
All right. Here's why I love the internet. Sometimes. I don't always love the internet. Sometimes having your job being so heavily focused on the internet is exhausting. Here's why sometimes I do love the internet. Somebody absolutely tore this dude up. I'm going to give you a link to this guy's tweet. Here you go. There's the credit. Oops. Nah, that's not his actual tweet. That's the photo to the image we're about to take a look at. Here is this account, this tweet, which I thought was great. Somebody tore this dude up, and that artillery position is about to get absolutely owned. The point is less about showing you guys the actual position and more about showing you what the world is doing right now. They have absolutely geolocated, based off of that just very short clip there, the exact location of where that all took place. And it's just outside of Rubizny, in that little town there. OSINT is scary nowadays. You're not wrong. So back in the day, I had a job doing OSINT, and it was a lot different than this. It was hard. It was hard. Dinner Pro. Thanks, man. Hell yeah. Missed a couple of these. I missed a couple big time, big ones. Chris, thank you for the $101.20 just because. Thank you. Wow, man. Machine Smith 42, thank you for the $2. My Toka. It was most likely Russia talking about Nord Stream here. However, the U.S. has done things like that before many times in the past. If it was us, I wouldn't be surprised. TRM, thank you for the $10. I don't know, it smells like CIA job to me. Despite sounding like it's conspiracy nut, but Russia, in my opinion, loses more from it. And the U.S. has been trying to cut it off for a while now, it seems. A lot of question marks around Nord Stream 1 and 2. You know, they try to... I say they. You know, I'm not a big, like, they versus we or, you know, black or white kind of guy. It's just not my style. When I say they, I mean in general, the narrative. Tried to say that it was essentially just a failure. Well, there are people that are a lot smarter than I am, that make a lot more money than I do, that know tolerances, that know pressures, that, two, geographically separated pipelines don't just fail like that. That doesn't make sense. And it's not just going to fail. Okay. Funker, what will it take for this war to end? Putin's removal? Probably. That's a shot in the dark. You put me on the spot and I throw a dart at a dartboard. Yeah. It failed 7 or so times to the point of a catastrophic failure, so far geographically separated. In this, there's a level of ignorance here on my part, right? Keeping in mind, I've been gone for 2 weeks. I've had 48 hours to do everything that I could to get caught back up. That was one of the areas that I was hoping to have more to discuss tonight. It might be something that we talk about more in the future, but another one of those very, from the heart questions. Does a failure in one impact the other? Right? Is there a redundancy thing there? Chris, thanks for the 139. Wow, man. Can't get right. Thanks for the 500. Dope. Doesn't Russia gain a lot from any division of NATO in Europe over the gas debate? You can make an argument. So here's the thing. Here's the thing with the pipeline guys. You can make an argument for all parties involved, positively and negatively. You can make that argument, right? I think this is one of those situations that we're really not going to end up in a state where we truly understand that, and there's going to be very few people that do. This is one of those problems. Next one. Anyway, there you go. So, Rubizny, just outside of Rubizny. I want to say it's to the southeast of Rubizny. I had it earlier on Google Maps. I, plugged that lat long in. Make videos on the internet, gets geolocated, you get blown up. Probably going to happen. Let's move on to our next one. So we're shifting now. We're focused on the east at the moment. We've been talking a lot about the east, and I want to shift to the south. I want to shift to Kherson, where over the last few weeks, from what I understand, the situation has been quite a bit different. Russia's focus in the south from a defensive perspective, their posture in the south has been a little bit stronger, or Ukraine's attention from a counteroffensive perspective and from a combat power perspective has been a little bit less. It's difficult for me to really, truly understand that. Might just be an ignorance thing. When I use the word ignorance, I mean, quite honestly, and hopefully, that it is really just an understanding thing, right? I am ignorant to being separated from it geographically, being separated from it over the last 2 weeks, from where ultimately the true priorities were for Ukraine. However, one narrative that I did come across right before we started the stream is that ground has really started to be taken near Kherson. Now, that's not to say that ground hadn't in the past, but it's been much more of a meat grinder. And some of the footage that we've got here that I'm going to show you and we're going to talk about is going to show you that, right? When you're talking apples, maybe green apples and red apples, but two different situations. Kharkiv versus Kherson. We're shifting off of Kharkiv. We're going to talk a little bit about Kherson here. The very first one that I've got for you is somewhere in Kherson Oblast, and we've got a run and gun battle between Ukrainians and Russians, and it's some wild footage to watch. It's going to come up for you guys full so I can check back in on the chat over here.
Подожди. Отстать. Отстать. Все, стоять. Стреляй по нем нахуй. Бодя, дальше отойди, блядь. Сука. Тихо, ты там бегай по хате. Попал? Красавчик.
Хату. Попал?
Куда побег?
Он вперед, вдоль дома побежал.
I want to cover a comment. I know. Don't feed the wildlife. I get it. I'm not saying this comment's wildlife. I want to cover a comment that came across. Do you not allow comments that disagree with the majority of comments in chat? There is a difference between disagreeing, and this is out of context. I have no idea what you posted prior. Understand that. But this is pertinent for everybody else. Absolutely not. Differentiation in opinion is, a hallmark of freedom, right? We're allowed to disagree, right? Where we do start shutting comments down is malice, right? There is absolutely no place for malice on the internet. It's too easy for you to just reach across the internet and be a dickhead. It's too easy, and it's too easy for us to boot you right out of chat for it. So if you're out there and you feel like being a little bit spicy today, there's only one person that's allowed to be spicy in here, and that is Funker. And sometimes he also allows me to be a little bit spicy, but then I get pee-pee slapped for it later. So if you're being a little bit too spicy, they're going to shut you down, right? Your protections, your freedom of speech, it protects you from prosecution, not from being timed out or banned in the chat. Okay? Here we go.
Давай, хуярь на. БК, блядь, храни трошки, ебать. Замес нахуй. Все, хватит нахуй.
All right, let's bring it back up. All right, the next one that we've got. See, we're already over our hour. I told you guys where we're going to go over. We've got a Ukrainian recon unit making contact with Russian forces somewhere in Kherson Oblast. I don't have exact locations for this. Oddly, from the footage that I selected tonight, I'm not saying this is consistent across the board. The footage that I selected tonight for these locations wasn't, who's showing me their exact location. It's just what helps depict the on-ground situation in each of these areas based on a baseline of footage that we have. But oddly, the Ukrainian footage that I have isn't giving away their exact positions, unless somebody who could very well geolocate it. I don't know. But I don't have an exact position for this. If I had one, I'd give it to you. I would. Copyright music on the back end. We're going to let that one ride, and I'll deal with it after the fact.
Вперед, вперед!
That's a nice AK. Mm-hmm. Okay. Bring it back up. The next one I've got is Ukrainian troops advancing on Russian forces somewhere, once again, in Kherson Oblast. And it's vague titles because that's the information that we have. This one's coming up for you guys here now.
Бодя, блядь, сядь!
Harry, I got your 557 and appreciate it. We'll cover that in just a second.
Гранату! Гранату! Две гранаты, заходим под гранату!
All right. So, question came across for 557. Harry Archer sent in, said, Russian nuclear division plus nuclear equipment spotted heading towards Ukraine earlier today. Multiple sources. Russian scare tactic or serious threat? Probably a mixture. There is ample nuclear capable equipment that has been used against Ukraine already. What I hate seeing, and some of the mods for Funker 530 were talking about this one, and I was reading through that thread right before we started. But what I hate seeing is any level of like fear mongering, right? Great example. We moved all of our equipment, all of our bombers, jets, all of that stuff out of Florida because there was a hurricane coming. Russia moves its equipment around regularly. A lot of Russia's doctrine is to make as much of their equipment and capabilities nuclear capable or able to operate under nuclear conditions, which it is its own other discussion to have. Russia being able to operate in a nuclear environment based on the precedent that we have is just an entirely separate discussion. I don't know. Russia moves their equipment around quite a bit. And it's photos and video of a train that's passing the specific equipment that is on it. I don't know. Again, I've been out for a little while and have had relatively short time to cram. Putin does things purposefully, and Putin does have his hands at a very low level on strategy and planning. He is likely moving that stuff around if one were to believe that it's purposeful and not some level of coincidental, because this is like central Russia, if I understand where this train was moving. If one is to believe that it's purposeful, he is likely doing that to coincide or run in parallel with his comments during the annexation speech relative to we will defend Russia and our homeland with nuclear weapons. The United States was the first to do that and set a precedent, which is really, it's alarming language, but it's not far off of his, I've been using the word precedent quite a bit. Russia used the word precedent, so I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's really not far off of his historical language, to my understanding, right? I'm not, and I've said this before, guys, I'm not a Russia expert. We watch footage, right? We base a lot of what we talk about here on footage. I don't have time to watch the media. I don't have time to get other people's takes. I wish I did. And I'm starting to have a little bit more time to understand the different takes that are out there. And as we move further and further down the path of this being what I do full time, I'm hoping to be able to provide that red team, or differentiating opinion where there is one. This one was one of those things that I saw it and I kind of rolled my eyes a bit. Does that make sense? That's the best way for me to explain that. It's in like central Russia. Everything from the Xander, I don't know if the Tochka has a nuclear capability or not. There are a lot of weapon systems in Russia's arsenal that are technically nuclear capable. I need more NAFO memes, Ronnie. Trolling the chucks on Twitter. It took me a long time to find out about NAFO. A long time. It's just a disappointing amount of time to find out about all that. It's funny stuff, man. The very last one we've got is technically Russia perspective footage. This is reportedly a Ukrainian patrol, an entire Ukrainian patrol. This is back from around September 20th. Again, there might be those that are new in chat that don't know that I was gone for a couple weeks, but we're doing a little bit of rehashing. That way we'll catch ourselves back up to current state. We can begin focusing a little bit more on current state stuff moving on. But this is an entire Ukrainian patrol that ends up being destroyed somewhere in Kherson Oblast. Again, two sides to every coin, guys. And this is one of those pieces of footage that, I mentioned. Kherson has been less of a steamroll. That's the easiest way of putting it, as the counteroffensive in the east. It really blows when Ronnie misses all my sucky jokes. Hi, buddy. It's good to see you, Josh. How are you, buddy? Chris, thanks for the 2023 Funkers Not Funk Around. That's funny. We do more often than you'd think. Can't get right. Thanks for the 933. I think we already covered that one. If I missed one of these guys, I do apologize for it. There's been a ton of support that's flowed in tonight, and all I can say is that we very much so appreciate it. Chris, thanks for the 50. I like my 338 Lapua. Great sniper rifle. I've actually never had the opportunity to shoot a 338. The biggest that I have ever shot is probably a 30-06, now that I think about it. I grew up very backwoods, lever action, bolt action kind of living. I'm an Intel dweeb by trade, so I didn't get to do really any of the cool stuff. I did shoot an AT-4 once, and I missed. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. But you're also welcome to ask Josh about how he lost us the war in Afghanistan on his AT-4 miss in combat. Moving on. The very last thing that I wanted to do is I wanted to, with you guys, jump into the trending section for the last 7 days and cover a couple more videos, right? These ones are going to be not safe for work. I do like to let you guys know that ahead of time. And some of them are going to be difficult to watch. We've got a little bit of historical footage coming from around about February 25th here. This is the third most watched video on the website in the last 7 days. What we're going to see is a war crime. Okay. These are Russians engaging civilian vehicles around Hostomel Airport on about February 25th, right? So it is a little bit dated, but it is footage that is relatively recent to us. I haven't seen this until, the last week or so. Here you go. Discretion advised, once again. Chris, thanks for the $69.99. Wow, man. Someday I'll write up the story. This is from Josh. Someday I'll write up the story of how I single-handedly lost the war in Afghanistan by compensating for the recoil of an AT-4. Just to make you feel better, I'll tell them my miss. Well, I mean, mine wasn't in combat; it was in training. But you know, that, I don't know if that makes you feel any better, because it's pretty bad that that happened to you, or that you did that. Is a better way of putting that. Dumb question, not a dumb question. What's the difference between the Z and the V on Russian cars? The location from which they came. I don't remember the exact breakdown, but the different symbols on Russian vehicles ultimately correlated to whether or not they came from the east, from the south, etc., so on and so forth. Now, and if I'm not mistaken as well, that also had some level of correlation to the service, or the service arm, right? All right, bringing it back up. You guys can check the rest of that one out if you want to watch it here. And we've got technically 3 more that I want to look at here. We're going to see technically both perspective footage here, but we're going to watch a one-man assault on a Ukrainian position, Russian. Again, all sides of a coin. And before we get there, I'll tell you my AT-4 story, make Josh feel better. So, you actually, you know, being an absolute pogue like I am, you don't get to shoot many AT-4s, 203s, or really anything explosive. The most fun you're supposed to have is throwing a grenade. Well, I shot expert, and they had one live round of for the AT-4, one live round of the 203 for the experts that shot, or for those that shot expert. There were 2 of us. One was a female, and then there was me. She didn't want it. They wanted her to shoot the AT-4, so she gave it to me. So I get up there, and you know, we had gone through training with the 9mm, you know, simulation rounds. It's just tracers. We had gone through training, so I knew how to operate it. But I asked him very clearly. I said, "Hey, man, if I aim center mass at that distance with this AT-4, is it going to hit?" And I remembered my drill sergeant telling me that he was going to be real mad if I missed, and I was confident. And he said, "Yes, aim center mass, you're going to hit just fine." Safety went off. I pushed the little red thing over, and I pushed the trigger, the button. It's actually a button, and nothing happened for like a split second. It's not like a rifle. It's not like a handgun. It's not, you know, it's not instant. There is a split hair of a second that nothing happened. And I can remember looking at the instructor, and when I did that, I guess I shifted a little bit, and this rocket went straight out and pinged off the top of that tank and probably went into some old lady's garden. I don't know where it went, but it went off into the distance. That's my one AT-4 shot I ever had. Video coming up for you. On the left here, you've got a Russian. On the right, you're going to have a Ukrainian position. Correct. Not an exact miss, but I think I ruined some old lady's flower bed. All right, bringing it back up. Ronnie out here committing training crimes. Shut up, Josh. At least I've failed in training. You're supposed to fail in training. That's how you learn, right? Now I know that I got to wait when I push the button. I did buy an AT4 tube. If you'd like to see it, you can follow along to the other stream. Some good nades. Yeah. Yep. Let's check in on some of this support. I've got two videos I'm gonna leave you guys with. But Silver Witness, thanks for the $5. Okay, so hear me out. That video of the Russians killing civilians was disgusting. Correct. Is there any legit military or strategic purpose for this? No. No. If it's known that they're civilians, right? That starts to get into a gray area, though. It does. It does. Just looking at this objectively. Let's look. I do my best to look at everything objectively. Thinking back to myself, driving through Kabul on my way from Camp Eggers up to Camp Phoenix or to HKaya, right? There are times when our blocking vehicles would roll out, and if somebody tried to run those, if we were in the MRAPs, our gunners look right at them. Crank the turrets. If you do anything further, we're going to assume you're a threat. So there is a balance there. There are two sides to that coin. What you don't see, because we can't, is whether or not they had blown a checkpoint, right? I think the assumption here is that they are just passing freely along the road, right? But what we can't see is what's outside of that. Checking in a little bit more. Chris, thanks very much for the $50.60. I love going from my 338 to the 30-06. I don't have either caliber, and I've been meaning to get either. I think my next purchase is going to be a 6.5. Yeah, I want to replace the 308 that I've got. Chris, thanks for the $13.99. What does a CIA agent do when they go to sleep? They go undercover. Stop it. Get help. One more video for you guys. We're coming up on an hour and a half. This might be the probably second longest stream. The longest stream that we did was the night of the invasion. For those that remember, February 24th. That one went for 3 or 4 hours. Oh, nope. Screwed that up. Girl, beard. I tried, man. Here's why I think it was Russia that tried taking out Nord Stream. I'm gonna show you proof of that, of their practice runs. You ready? There's a Russian jet. What's he shooting at? I have no idea. I have no idea who sabotaged Nord Stream. This again? Bro, this is the first time I've ever talked about this. What are you talking about? Get out of here. Ryan, check your DM, please. Oh, bro. Okay. Yeah, I got you, buddy. I got you. I got to download it really quick. Bring it back up here. Dumping it slow. It's just funny that there's no way in hell that little pond was what he was aiming at. I got one more thing I want to show you guys. Some of you guys might be familiar with Smoke Pit Fairy Tales, but I'll just let you watch this and you determine. This is not combat footage. These are our friends over at Smoke Pit Fairy Tales. Just check it out. We've got one more piece of footage that I'm going to leave you with before we end things tonight.
This isn't your normal military science fiction. Rejected from entry by the Marine Corps Heritage Foundation's annual awards program, Smoke Pit Fairy Tales is the greatest novel you've never heard of. Boiling inside a stew of sex, violence, and aliens, this novel embodies the life of the post-9/11 combat veteran in a way that's so honest and raw that only fiction could do it justice. With a near-exclusive 5-star rating, Smoke Pit Fairy Tales is the most American thing since landing on the moon.
All right. Go check out Smoke Pit Fairy Tales. Their videos that he does for that book are so raw that we're working with them to try and clean them up a little bit before. And this is one. It's a really awesome book. Please go check it out. Smoke Pit Fairy Tales. You can get it on Amazon. It's a fantastic book. I got one more video that I'm going to leave you with, but I'm not going to show it here. You guys are going to have to go and watch it if you choose to yourself. It's entirely up to you. Because I like the fact that we can spend time together Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern Standard right here. And I don't want to get banned for it. So, good night. We'll see you on the other stream if you happen to make it over there. I'll drop this link in the chat, in the live chat for you. Enjoy.
Hyperdrive.